Let's get it on then, shall we? Mwah. Welcome to Sex on the Peach, your weekly hump day dose of everyone's favourite untalked about topic, sex. Let's get honest, let's get open, let's get comfortable, and let's get into this week's show. Good evening, friends, lovers, listeners. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day, and happy Sex on the Peach Day. Now, I know it's late. Let's just say my time management has not been my best friend this week. But even though this episode is going out late, it's still Wednesday and still hump day somewhere. So let's just go with that. So this episode took a little hiatus whilst I had my rant moment. But listen, we need to talk about porn. And there's a lot to talk about. It is a topic that is controversial, but very prevalent in our society. For people who lacked any proper sex education, like most of us, porn can become a teacher, but it's not a very good one. Lessons such as safety, consent, and also, especially for women and vulva owners, pleasure, are aggressively missed. And aggressive is probably an apt word for the majority of mainstream porn that is available to us. Do I think it's all bad? No. Do I think it can be used in a healthy way? Yes. For transparency, I consume porn. I'm not anti it. I think porn can be great, but we're going to start to get into it because this will take multiple conversations, to be honest. But today, we'll be discussing the impact of pornography on individuals and relationships, the ethical considerations surrounding its production and consumption, and as always, I'll be answering some of your questions. So, let's dive in. Here is the XXX Files. So, let's define what we mean by pornography. Pornography refers to sexually explicit material, including images, videos, or literature that is created with the intention of sexually arousing or stimulating the viewer. It encompasses a very wide range of genres and content, and caters to various interests and preferences. And let's just say, in researching this episode, my internet browser history makes for an interesting read, and I'm pretty sure all of my devices now think that I have a solid addiction to multiple pornographic channels. Now listen, pornography is a very polarizing topic. For some, it's a form of entertainment and sexual expression, while for others, it's a source of concern, addiction, and ethical dilemmas. So it's important to explore various aspects of pornography, discussing its history, its influence on relationships, its impact on mental health, and the efforts to address issues of addiction. Whilst pornography has existed for centuries in different forms, literally since the first horny cave painters, the rise of the internet has dramatically changed its accessibility and level of consumption. I can't really remember But I feel like my first experience of actual porn type content beyond the odd sex scene in a movie was the program Eurotrash, if anyone else remembers that. And as much as I remember, it was kind of comedy, right? I can't remember all that well, but I do remember that one of my school friends and I would watch it whilst on the phone with each other and kind of try to dissect it and understand what on earth was happening before our very eyes. I feel like I need to revisit an episode, to be honest, because what were we watching? And then we discovered that Channel 5, now this is going back when there were only 5 TV channels, turned into a soft porn space late of a Friday night. And once again, we would kind of discuss it as we watched it. And I just remember feeling like if we weren't on the phone with each other to giggle our way through it, then I definitely couldn't watch it on my own because that would be creepy. Which I remember being like, is this weird? But actually, when researching for this episode, I found out that younger girls and vulva owners are much more likely to watch porn with friends than alone. So there we go. Common behavior, apparently. Other than that, the porn that I remember being on the radar was like those top shelf magazines with topless women on the front and adult video stores in like Soho. I don't ever remember feeling surrounded by porn when I was that kind of age. So that was my first experience of porn. And I have to be honest, I don't think it made the blindest bit of difference to my knowledge when I first started actually having sex. Like, I don't feel like the things I had seen filtered their way into the way I approached my sexual experiences any more than those slightly steamy scenes I had seen in movies. But that isn't the same experience that people are having today. The landscape of porn has completely changed. Yes, we had Playboy, and that had about 7 million subscribers a year. But nowadays, we have Pornhub, which has upward of 100 million views a day. So yes, porn has become increasingly accessible in this digital age, and its widespread availability online has made it easily accessible to almost everyone, which has some positive, but some very negative consequences. Human sexuality, even though we are often expected to suppress it, is always in force. And sometimes we satisfy our needs with self-pleasure. Sometimes we aren't accompanied by a partner. Sometimes we just want to. We all know I'm all about prioritizing self-pleasure either way. We're visual creatures. So porn was basically inevitable. And though no one wants to talk about it, we are, as a society, watching a lot of porn. In fact, 28,258 users are watching pornography every second. 1 in 5 mobile searches are for pornography. It is projected that virtual reality porn could be a $1 billion business by the year 2025. Whether or not you use porn is your personal choice. For some people, porn is a safe, quick way to assist masturbation or indulge a fantasy while engaging in solo or mutual pleasure. Porn can be a relatively harmless habit if used in the right and ethical way. But it is your responsibility as an adult to manage that habit so it stays healthy and doesn't start to affect your daily functioning or your relationships. Research does suggest that frequent and intense exposure to pornography can absolutely influence attitudes, beliefs, and behaviours related to sexuality. It can shape unrealistic expectations, it can impact self-esteem, and contribute to huge body image issues. So if there is one main takeaway from today, I need everyone to know that porn is not real. It is fictional. It is a space of bleached assholes and zero pubic hair, huge penises and minimal labia. People do not often climax together. Squirting, often completely fake. Every position does not feel good. Men and penis owners do not last forever. Everyone is not having and enjoying anal sex. And no one is having it without a lot of lubrication, which is never shown. Vulva owners are not orgasming all that often from penetrative sex with penis owners. It does not convey an overall accurate representation of adult sexual behaviours and desires, and it is not a healthy place to learn. And we're about to get into the bad shit. Obviously, I blame the lack of decent sexual education for the fact people feel they have to turn to porn when they have no other option. And it highlights how unacceptable it is that there isn't inclusive education for everyone, because this learning from porn is actually extremely prevalent in the LGBTQ+ community. Since the dawn of time, sex within the queer space has not even been acknowledged in the educational sense. There has been a complete lack of educational resources. So for young people in the queer community or those exploring their sexuality, they have felt that there is nowhere to turn for education other than porn, and so have previously been more likely to use it for that reason, which is actually incredibly problematic because the porn industry is notorious for fetishizing and misrepresenting LGBTQ+ sex. Most people have been exposed to porn by age 13. Approximately 84% of 14 to 18-year-old male and penis owners and 57% of 14 to 18-year-old female and vulva owners have watched pornography. And at these ages, most of the time, what is consumed in porn is then processed as reality. LGBTQ+ porn content is often produced by people who are not members of the community. And a lot of this content is actually still intended to be seen by a cisgender heterosexual audience, especially lesbian porn, which is most often created for a cishet male gaze, playing up to stereotypes and fetishizing a sexual orientation by objectifying fantasies upheld by men and penis owners. But lesbian relationships do not exist so that they can be a fetish for straight men. Most mainstream porn sites create content depicting lesbian women seducing straight women, which, in reality, is not the purpose of being a fucking lesbian. It perpetuates harmful ideas that most lesbian women are predatory. And this is the kind of shit that reinforces homophobic discourse. It's again not an accurate representation. Listen, I like lesbian porn when done correctly. I think it's great. But you have to be aware of what you are consuming and try to keep it ethical, which we will get onto very shortly. The same kind of stories can also be seen in gay male porn, coercing other men, whether they are straight or just hesitant, into having sex with them. And gay male porn is known for promoting derogatory terms and using dehumanizing gay stereotypes. It doesn't elicit respect for gay men in our culture and society. The most viewed gay scenes on Pornhub often see men degraded, if they have feminine traits. They contain terms such as slave boys, used like property, and most commonly, bareback, which literally means without protection. That is not a safe space in which to learn what safe and healthy sexual behaviour looks like. When it comes to transgender representation in porn, it's even more of a challenging issue, because porn is actually a prominent space in which trans people had felt featured and normalised. But actually, that normalisation has come at a huge price, because too much porn is focused on the belittlement of trans people, with too many videos featuring forced and painful sex acts, seemingly with the intention of punishment and humiliation. These ideals portrayed in this pornographic content teach consumers who may not have outside or prior education that these things are sexually okay and acceptable. It's all extremely problematic, considering porn actually promotes a lot of harmful, abusive content in the name of entertainment. And when it comes to harmful stereotypes, sometimes porn reflects ideas that are already incorrectly present in our culture and society. And it's unacceptable and should not be used to shape ideas of what is sexually desirable or acceptable. We also need to remember, we need to think about what it doesn't show. Even the most homemade and lifelike of porn, it doesn't show consent, it doesn't show aftercare, it doesn't show preparation, it doesn't show open sexual communication. It rarely shows mutual respect. Porn is not natural sex. It's a product. It's actors doing what they are told to do. Consent rarely matters, and sadly, non-consensual sex is utilised as a form of arousal, and not in the consensual non-consent kink space that we've spoken about on previous episodes. It's not aimed at pleasure. It's not aimed at what the other person wants. Up to 80% of porn is aggressive. 94% of the time, that aggression is targeted at women and vulva owners. And in those scenes, 95% of the time, the woman or vulva owners respond with either neutral or even a pleasured response. It's not representative of relationships or of love or of care. Most of the time, people's bodies are just used as objects, and it's often about abusing and mistreating people sexually, especially women and vulva owners. And then they are shown as enjoying everything that the men and penis owners expose them to, even if it's incredibly degrading and violent. And yes, there are people who enjoy that kind of sex, and more power to you if you do, because you need to live out the sexual experiences that feel good for you. This is not a space to kink shame for any specific sexual preferences, but this cannot be used as a space for people to use to try to find out what's expected of them during more conventional or vanilla sex, when a lot of the time, the ideas behind porn content are unhealthy, unethical, and sometimes actually illegal. There are many testimonials online of previous porn workers for mainstream sites, and some of their stories are truly harrowing. So if it's something that you want to learn more about, I would advise looking into it, but I say that with trigger warnings of abuse and violence because it's pretty fucking nasty. On porn site XXX, which I hate to admit, but hey, I'm here to be honest and let you all know that I have learned myself too. So I don't speak from a place of judgment, just a place from having educated myself better and wanting to help others to do the same. But this was a site that I used to use before becoming more informed on porn. Some of the most watched videos come with the titles Young, Teen, Forced. And on porn site Hamster, again, forced, blackmailed, and also MILF. Now, porn has promoted these themes as entertainment, but actually if we label them for what they really are, which are sexual assault and incest, these themes take a much darker path. For young people watching porn, 70% of them report to having seen an act depicted as non-consensual. 80% have seen women and vulva owners being called swear words and derogatory terms. 90% have seen someone being dominated in a violent way. This is not a healthy place for girls, boys, men, women, the non-binary community, the trans community, vulva owners, penis owners to learn what sex looks like. It's not educational for anyone. A lot of the porn on mainstream sites is not consensual. I've been open in past episodes about an ex-partner of mine uploading a video of me, of us, onto a porn site and how difficult it was to get taken down. There is a lot of that going on and very few restrictions in place to help it. And if we're getting really fucking dark, which we need to, this mainstream free porn culture is heavily connected to sex trafficking. And the more that people watch this porn, the more the demand for sex trafficking continues. But listen, these mainstream sites are not going away anytime soon, given the consumer traffic that they receive. They also have little to no motivation to change their behavior. So what can we do to help that if we want to consume porn? Which I want to say right now is okay. I know we've really gone for gold with the bad stuff, but I promise you it's about to get a bit better. It isn't all bad. So, the first step is awareness. We now know the dangers and the dark sides. We have a choice. We can be mindful about our porn consumption. We can actively seek porn that is produced ethically, that is actually sex positive, that has all parties not just consenting, but also benefiting from their work. But supply follows demand, so it's going to be on us, the consumers, to help make these changes happen. It is vital for us to critically examine the production, distribution, and consumption of pornography and consider those ethical implications involved. The consent and well-being of performers, the representation of diverse bodies and identities, and the potential for exploitation or harm within the industry. Ethical porn is the new term for pornographic content that is produced with the performer's rights in mind. It prioritizes pleasure, it promotes body diversity, it's made under good working conditions. It's a lot more natural. There's kissing, there's a sense of intimacy and connection. There aren't painfully over-dramatized orgasms. It tries to feature a wide variety of sexualities, races, genders, body types, abilities. It tries to represent and illustrate how sex can look for all of the lovers out there. And what happens behind the scenes is just as important. These production companies go out of their way to make sure that they have ongoing and explicit consent from all of their performers for everything that goes on in front of the camera. And to be fair, I would say that as a consumer, isn't it much more of a turn on to know that the actors you're watching are actually having fun and enjoying themselves also? The downside for a lot of people in an ever increasingly expensive world Ethical porn pretty much always comes with a cost because it makes it possible for the companies to pay their performers well, which in my opinion makes it worth doing if you can. I personally pay for my porn because I want to support sex workers. We all know I work with the company Bellesa, and their ethical porn site Bellesa Plus is honestly a game changer. And it doesn't just have pornographic videos, it also has hundreds and hundreds of pieces of erotic literature and audio porn, which I would argue are a great way to consume porn. I think they're brilliant because, yes, you have a guide, but you're still using your own mind and your own imagination, which is the best place to live in to figure out what you actually like sexually rather than have it played out in front of you and think that's what it's supposed to look like. So I would highly, highly advocate that if you haven't looked into audio porn and erotic literature, that you whack it on your sexual bucket list. So yes, Bellesa Plus, an amazing place to start. It's personally the only site that I use, and we know that I don't mention products that I don't personally support and want to advocate for. But continue to research and look for sex-positive producers and companies that promote consent and sexual empowerment, because education is really going to play the most vital role in navigating the complexities of pornography. Porn can also be a topic of contention within relationships, as people may absolutely have different perspectives, boundaries, and comfort levels when it comes to its use. It's really important to discuss your concerns with your partner and any potential impact on intimacy and connection. As always, open and honest communication is key to navigating this subject because it's incredibly sensitive and people can get very defensive about their porn usage. But avoiding a conversation about pornography is just not going to be helpful, especially if you have completely different boundaries regarding the subject. And some people may view watching porn privately as cheating. Not a view I hold personally, but I do know that there are people that feel this way. If you strongly believe that porn has no place in a relationship, that's up to you. But you also have to be willing to listen to your partner and keep your mind open to their own perspective if it differs from yours, and vice versa. All partners need to be respectful of what the other has to say. Be open and non-shaming with your partner when talking about porn. Sure, have the right to state a preference that your partner doesn't watch porn, but they have the right to decide if that's not something they are willing to give up. On the flip side, if your partner doesn't want you watching porn, you have the right to say no as well. But in the end, it's better to be honest. Because if those things aren't deal breakers, it at least allows you the space to discuss some parameters around porn. Like watching it together or not watching it in front of each other. If you are uncomfortable with your partner consuming porn, take a moment to ask yourself why. Because there are a lot of reasons that might make sense, especially if you feel like their consumption might be affecting your very real and existing sexual experiences together. Sometimes it's as simple as the fact that you only want your partner to fantasize about you. But it can also be true that your partner can be stimulated by something else and then bring a lot of that sexual energy back to you in a positive way. And those two things really have nothing to do with each other. But if you talk about these fears, your partner can reassure you by letting you know how sexy and amazing they think you are. And they can address any underlying insecurities that you might have about your sex life together that are triggered by the thought of porn consumption. If you and your partner both know what kind of porn you like to watch, you can use it as a gateway to exploring together. You can maybe find moments that are arousing or exciting and use them to bring into your own sexual adventures together. It can be a way to spice things up in a healthy relationship. If you do establish a no porn relationship, it's only valid as long as both of you are actually on board with it. Porn thrives on secrecy and shame. So the more open conversations you can have about it, the healthier and the better. And it is absolutely crucial to discuss healthy consumption habits. It's a habit that can be managed in a way that remains healthy, and your two choices definitely aren't abstinence or addiction. But I do just want to touch on porn addiction quickly, because it is a very real and existing thing. It's a dopamine fix. It gives our reward center a hit. And if porn use becomes excessive, it can lead to erectile dysfunction in men and penis owners. It can lead to decreased sexual satisfaction across the board, sometimes because of the unrealistic expectations people have about sex. Sometimes because people are no longer in sole control of their own sexual experience. There's then another person involved with their own desires. It can have a huge effect on your sex and romantic life. It can replace or interfere with your desire for intimacy in the real world. Often people don't realize that their habit is problematic until things have become particularly bad. The most common root causes of porn addiction, like other addictions, are some form of emotional pain or missing emotional need. Porn often feels like an escape from that pain by stimulating a rush of other emotions or sensations. And in terms of dopamine, sex can be a very rewarding behavior. If you are feeling like you are becoming dependent on porn, please know that you are not alone. And know that it's amazing that you've recognized that there may be a problem, which is a difficult thing to do in a society where watching porn is now relatively normalized. A porn addiction might look like being able to stop using it, even if you're trying to do so. Losing large periods of time and your days watching porn. Losing interest in sex. Becoming more demanding in your ideas about sex and becoming frustrated with your partner if they aren't performing like the scenes you're consuming. You may even begin to feel physical pain due to repetitive movement, or even ongoing headaches due to screen time. And like any other addiction, that you become angry or irritable when you aren't able to access porn. Again, I know that porn thrives on shame, and so this is set up to make you feel completely isolated and alone. But I promise you, you are not, especially in this day and age. This is increasingly common. 32% of porn watchers actually feel that their habit could be considered problematic. I really do recommend that if you feel your pornographic consumption has become compulsive and addictive, if you can, as always, I know that therapy is a privilege, you look to seek help from a sex therapist. They will look to help you develop some strategies that can address your own specific porn viewing patterns, whether that's the times you're most likely to consume porn or whether there are certain things that trigger you to want to watch it. It's most likely that cognitive behavioral therapy will be put in place to help you move through it, and also allow yourself the space with a therapist to talk through the path that caused you to become addicted in the first place. It's important that you feel supported and listened to, and it will help you to understand what led you to where you are and how to forge a path forward. So if anyone out there does feel like they're struggling with this, I hope that helps just a little bit. Okay, well, before we move into the questions for today, I really hope that some of this information has provided some helpful insights and might spark some meaningful conversations about pornography. It's important to remember that porn is a complex and very multifaceted topic. It can have positive and negative impacts, and its ethical implications really need to be carefully considered. Remember to keep yourself informed. Remember, it isn't real. It's so important to keep distinguishing between fantasy and reality and to prioritize consent and respect in all aspects of our sexual lives. Be mindful about what you are consuming and how often. Try to communicate openly about it. And please prioritize the well-being of yourself and your relationships and your real life connections, because they are real and tangible things. So if you feel like porn is having a negative effect, it's time to take a break. I really do hope and think that with healthy practices in place, we can start to navigate the world of pornography in a healthy and respectful way. Okay, so let's get into today's questions. Not exactly porn, but what are your thoughts on OnlyFans? Exploitative or just an extension of sex work in the digital age? Okay, whilst I can maybe assume that everyone knows what OnlyFans is, but just in case anyone listening doesn't, OnlyFans is a popular subscription-based social media platform that allows creators to share content, including explicit material, with subscribers in exchange for a fee. And it has blown the fuck up in both attention and controversy the past few years. I mean, listen, as long as it's consensual and safe, I obviously want to support sex workers. And I think it's important that we do. But I can also absolutely understand that views and opinions on OnlyFans and similar platforms can vary massively. But that's all they are. They're just views and opinions, as is mine. There's no right or wrong answer here. There's just a space for understanding people have different beliefs and values without judgment if it's different to your own. Let's remember that OnlyFans really exploded during lockdown, which allowed sex workers and also content creators who maybe hadn't branched into that side of things to create a new stream of income and fill in the financial gaps that 2020 brought upon us all. So I would say I support the level of financial autonomy for people and sex workers, as it allows them to control and monetize their content directly. And it's a way for sex workers to circumvent those traditional intermediaries and have more agency in their work, which I actually think is great. And on the subject of autonomy, I would also say it allows creators to produce their own content, which is a much more ethical way to go, especially as so many major platforms in this pornography hemisphere are essentially publishing content that's not consensual and a lot of the time illegal. So this puts the creation of content into the creator's hands and lets them decide what they want to do, who they want to do it with, and allows them to block people if they're abusive or disrespectful. So I think that's also a huge positive. There's also much more diversity amongst creators, which I think is great because, again, there's not in the majority of adult sites. And where there is, diversity is often used, again, in a way of fetishization, which is really not okay. I do, on the flip side, understand the concerns about potential exploitation, privacy risks, and the impact on the overall perception of sex work. But there are ongoing debates regarding the regulation, safety, ethics of platforms like OnlyFans, particularly concerning issues such as age verification, content moderation, and worker rights. And I obviously think it's really fucking important that we sort all of that shit out ASAP. OnlyFans creators do receive insane amounts of slut shaming outside of the platform, which I think is fucking disgusting. Sex workers have been shamed and devalued since the dawn of time, but it's 2023 now, so wake the fuck up and leave people be. And the double standards for women and vulva owners versus men and penis owners is still very fucking prevalent. I think that sex work is a very complex industry and people engage in it for a variety of reasons, which goes without saying. I want to be from a place of consent and safety, but I know we aren't always there yet. But there is always going to be a desire and a need for sex work. It isn't going away. So I actually think it's important that we evolve with it as opposed to fighting the new versions of it. If people are fervently against it, then feel free to follow your own beliefs and abstain from it. I think that those who do wish to create and consume it deserve to be able to do so without shame. And I think that with the right safety measures put in place, it's hopefully a much safer space that could result in reducing sex trafficking and other forms of sexual exploitation that sex workers have encountered in the past with more mainstream pornography. So those are just my thoughts on it, for now anyway. Is there porn that depicts true lovemaking, or is its very nature against that? Thank you. Okay, well, I would say to start that some pornography may absolutely attempt to depict aspects of intimacy, connection, romanticism, but the portrayal of true lovemaking is so subjective and can completely vary from person to person, and I'd be hesitant to dictate or suggest what the meaning of lovemaking is, because realistically, if you're in love with someone and you're engaging in sexual activity and mutual pleasure together, whatever that might be, that could all be considered lovemaking. Whether you're engaging in foreplay or slow penetration, rougher penetration, I'm certainly not here to decide what the bar is for whether someone would consider it making love or not. So this is definitely something that would be a personal and individual choice for you. And pornography's representation of love or lovemaking may not align with your experiences or expectations of what constitutes emotional, intimate connections. So we always have to sort of maintain those critical perspectives when consuming porn, because it's never really going to accurately reflect the complexity and depth of the real life relationships and the way we feel, or the full range of human sexual experience. So even when we engage with the most sensual porn, building and nurturing genuine emotional connections and intimacy in relationships to the point where we feel like we are making love with our partners involves communication, trust, emotional connection, and a variety of experiences beyond what pornography can really typically portray. Especially as porn tends to emphasize sexual performance, explicit imagery, and exaggerated behavior rather than those emotional, relational aspects of love and intimacy. However, I would maybe suggest checking out both the sensual and homemade categories on Bellesa. It's the only porn site I use, so it's my only point of reference. It's female and vulva owner driven, so it's generally more sensual in general anyway. But with the homemade category, especially as it's an ethical site, so this is not a case where someone has uploaded themselves and their partner or ex-partner without consent, so you can watch without that being any kind of worry. When it's sex between real-life couples, there's much more of a sense of emotional connection and intimacy. So that would probably be the closest suggestion I can think of that might be enjoyable for you, if that's the pornography that you prefer. Also, I'd suggest trying some erotic literature and audio porn so that you can take those stories and run with them, and then you can sort of create those love-making scenarios that look right for you with your own imagination too. That would probably be my main suggestion, actually. But I hope that helps a little bit. Me, female, and my partner, male, love porn and initially would watch together. However, we have developed different tastes. He really gets off on the hardcore, really degrading themes, and there's nothing that turns me off more. I love more of a softer, romantic, more ethical style. Any suggestions for a solution? Yes, for sure. When partners have differing preferences in pornography, it can definitely present a bit of a challenge, especially if you are looking to have shared sexual experiences with your porn consumption. However, I'd like to think there are some compromises that can help navigate this situation. I know you said you prefer a more ethical style, but even if your partner is into more hardcore degrading porn, I would again like to heavily advocate that this is consumed on an ethical porn site where the workers have given consent and are working in safe conditions. People have their kinks and their porn preferences, and I completely respect that, but I do want to keep promoting that we move away from these mainstream porn sites, as we never really know what we're watching with them. You know what I'm going to say first? Find the right moment and start out by having a conversation with your partner about your differing tastes in pornography. Allow each other some time so that the both of you can express your desires and concerns without feeling criticised or invalidated. And discuss your preferences in a non-judgmental and understanding manner, because it's okay that you do have different preferences. Obviously, as long as you aren't being expected to act out anything that you don't feel comfortable with as a result of the more hardcore entertainment. Maybe try to look for common elements or themes that you both enjoy or can find mutually arousing. Explore genres or categories that incorporate aspects of both softer and more explicit content, such as sensual or artistic erotica. Even in the sensual section of Bellesa, it incorporates that more sensual feel, even with the videos that have a rougher style of penetration. And I'd maybe just suggest exploring a bunch of different things to see if there's a way to bridge the gap between your preferences and find a sort of middle ground that satisfies both of your needs. And also consider taking turns choosing the content that you watch together, and then sort of alternate between your preferred styles and trying new genres. And that way you're both incorporating a variety of content, which might help to keep the experience fresh and also works as a compromise to cater to both of your desires over time. Also, instead of relying on other people's pornography, consider exploring creating your own intimate content. That way, you can tailor the experience to your individual preferences and maintain the sense of connection and intimacy between the two of you. That could involve role-playing, fantasy exploration, or experimenting with different scenarios that incorporate elements of both softness and intensity. And then on the days that you really can't find a mutual ground to meet on in terms of watching porn together, fuck it, you can watch yourselves, and that's pretty hot in my opinion. Obviously, it almost goes without saying that it's important to respect each other's boundaries and not pressure or coerce one another into consuming content that makes either of you uncomfortable. The key really is finding a balance that allows both of you to explore your desires and maintain that healthy and fulfilling sexual connection. So hopefully at least one of those tips help, but anything further, please do feel free to hit me up. I'm happy to watch porn with my husband, but my poor ADHD brain gets distracted by tiny background details in the scene, like furniture, bad tattoos, cute shoes, and it really pulls me out of the mood. Okay, so I'm not someone who has been specifically diagnosed with ADHD, so I don't want to speak in a space that isn't mine. So I will say that my answer to this question is completely from research that I have looked into to try and provide some help, rather than anything from my own thoughts or opinions, as again, I won't ever try to vocally occupy a space that I do not belong to. So if anyone listening also has ADHD and has anything to say or suggest in regards to this answer, please do let me know, and I will follow this answer up at a later date, as it's really important to me to provide information that is helpful and correctly informative. So, from researching this, I'm of the understanding that it's actually very, very common for individuals with ADHD to experience difficulty staying focused when watching pornography. And if you are finding that your attention gets easily diverted by these small details in the scenes, here are a few strategies that I have found that hopefully may help. First up, to set the stage for watching pornography by minimizing any potential distractions in your environment. So choosing a quiet, comfortable space where you can focus without interruptions. Put away any objects or items that might capture your attention, such as your phone or other gadgets. And also establish boundaries and time limits for watching pornography, as having a predetermined time limit can help you to stay a bit more focused during that specific period. So if you can, communicate with your husband about the duration of the viewing session and agree on a time frame that works for both of you. Practice directing your visual attention intentionally, as redirecting your attention to the central aspects of the scene can help to keep your focus intact. In doing this, you can try techniques like maintaining eye contact with your partner or focusing on specific body parts or movements that you find pleasurable or arousing. And on this note, engaging multiple senses can also help to keep your attention focused. So consider incorporating touch, sound, or scent during the viewing experience, whether that's holding hands with your partner or playing some soft background music or using scented candles to create a more immersive and sensory-rich environment. And also maybe look at experimenting with different genres. If certain elements or details consistently distract you, you might want to consider exploring different styles of pornography that have less emphasis on those specific distracting factors. You might hopefully find that by experimenting with different content, you could come across options that align better with your preferences, and that might minimize distractions. I've also read that mindfulness exercises can help focus your attention, but I absolutely know that this isn't for everyone. So please feel free to take from this what you want to. But if you do wish to give it a go, prior to watching pornography, take a few moments to practice some deep breathing or some mindfulness meditations, which can help to calm your mind and increase awareness of the present moment and reduce the likelihood of getting caught up in those distractions. I'm so very, very aware that everyone's experience with ADHD is unique, and so what works for one person may not work for another at all. So I can only suggest experimenting with these different strategies and finding what works best for you. I hope that helps a little bit. But I really mean this. If anyone else who does have an ADHD diagnosis has any suggestions, please do reach out so I can pass them on. Thank you very much in advance. As a male at a young age, I thought porn was how I'd learn to have sex. The older I've gotten and matured, the more I've learned that connection, consent, and communication is how you learn and ultimately begin to love. Now, at 36 years old, I have little interest in porn, but a love to connect. I love this. That's amazing to hear. And yes, it's all about connection, consent, and communication in intimate relationships. And I love when we evolve in our understanding of sexuality and intimacy, because it's a fucking journey. Like, it's been a journey for me too, and I think that's one of the reasons I find it so important to speak from a place of learning, because I do not want to profess that I woke up one day and knew much about sex. It's all growth, it's all learning, and this is amazing. And I really hope that other people go through a similar journey of realizing that porn doesn't accurately reflect the realities of healthy and fulfilling sexual experiences, even though, yes, it has its place as a form of entertainment. And building those strong foundations based on trust, open communication, and mutual respect are the things that enhance the quality of our intimate experiences and make for deeper and more meaningful connections with our partners. And that's the shit that we just don't see in porn. And I think as well, it's important to remember that our personal preferences and interests really do continue to evolve over time. As we grow and mature, our perspectives on sexuality may shift, and what once held appeal may no longer align with our values or desires anymore. It's perfectly natural and also wonderful to develop new interests and prioritize different aspects of intimacy as we gain more experience and also more self-awareness. Everyone's journey with sex, intimacy, sexuality, sensuality, connection is so unique, and it's so important to respect and honor your own journey. And honestly, your prioritization of connection in intimate relationships is a really fucking positive and healthy approach. And if your current focus on connection and intimacy is fulfilling for you, then fuck it. There's definitely no need to maintain an interest in pornography because, as you've already discovered, connection and emotional intimacy are the gorgeous components of a satisfying sexual relationship. I fucking loved this comment, so thank you for sending it in. And all I can really say is amazing. Continue to explore and nurture these connections and keep prioritizing mutual pleasure and satisfaction because that's really the path towards those fulfilling intimate experiences. Gorge. Love it. Okay, last question for today. My boyfriend has a porn addiction. I found out he was sending other girls sexual images, and when I asked why, he said it was part of his addiction. He says he's trying to stop, but I've walked in on him watching porn multiple times. I'm finding it hard to trust him now, and I'm not sure how to move forward. Fuck. I am so sorry to hear that you are going through this. Dealing with a partner's addiction is fucking difficult. Addiction is fucking difficult. And of course, you're going to feel hurt and betrayed and unsure about how to move forward, especially when he is using his addiction as a reason to behave in a way that is untrustworthy and disrespectful to you. Trust is a fundamental aspect of a healthy relationship, and when it's broken, it can be really goddamn challenging to rebuild. I'm going to give you a few suggestions regarding moving forward, but I cannot emphasize this enough. It is so important that you prioritize your well-being in this and ultimately make decisions that align with your needs and your boundaries. You do not have to compromise on those if you feel disrespected. You can walk away from this if it is hurting you. I really mean that. You really need to have a very vulnerable, honest, and sincere conversation with your boyfriend about your concerns, your emotions, and the impact his actions have had on your trust. Very candidly express your feelings regarding the use of pornography and also encourage him to openly share his struggles and efforts to overcome his addiction, which I hope he is doing. This will require a safe and non-defensive space from both of you, which is often easier said than done when dealing with someone who has an addiction and isn't ready to help themselves yet. I know that it's a different topic, but you will hear from my episode with Sam Cassidy in season 1 regarding drug and alcohol addiction. It is really necessary that your boyfriend wants to help himself, because if he doesn't, it's unfortunately unlikely there will be any long-term change. But if you're going to try and make this work together, and he wants this, effective communication is going to be your absolute key to understanding each other's perspectives and finding a way to forge a path forward together. Learn more about porn addiction and how it can impact relationships, because understanding the nature of addiction can help you approach the situation with empathy and patience. Honestly, when we are dealing with addiction in any form, I'm going to strongly suggest encouraging your boyfriend to seek professional help from a therapist or counselor who specializes in addiction and relationships. Because changing a porn watching habit is not as easy as just saying, I won't do it again. Professional guidance can provide him with the necessary tools and support to address this addiction and work towards rebuilding trust. And I also think you would be able to see that as a positive step forward for your relationship. Or if you can, consider couples therapy. A therapist can help facilitate constructive conversations and provide you both with the tools for navigating challenges as a couple. As you may have heard, last week's episode was all about boundaries, and you absolutely have the space to clearly define and communicate your boundaries regarding pornography use within a relationship. Establishing boundaries can help create a sense of safety and provide clarity on what is acceptable for you within your relationship. This may involve talking about how often pornography is consumed or discussing the type of content that is acceptable to both of you. But please remember, boundaries are something you have to protect yourself, not something you force on another person. So if you communicate your boundaries regarding porn to your partner and he feels completely differently and doesn't feel he can meet them, it's not your place to try and change him. So it may sadly be your place to walk away from the relationship. However, again, if you are going to try and make things work, rebuilding this trust is going to take time and effort, and that's from both of you. It's essential that your boyfriend demonstrates some consistency and follow through on his commitment to overcoming addiction. Transparency, honesty, and open communication are absolutely vital in this imminent period of time. I'd suggest discussing strategies for accountability, which may be something such as attending support groups or implementing a system of check-ins with each other. Because it's all very good for him to talk the talk and say he wants to stop, but people also have to walk the fucking walk. And you will need to see that he is actually making the effort, because otherwise it's just words. But overcoming addiction is a challenging process that takes time and dedication. So if your boyfriend is committed to change and actively seeking help, please try to be patient and as supportive as you can. And I go back to my first point. Take care of yourself during this time, because it's fucking challenging. Engage in self-care activities that promote your emotional well-being. Spending time with loved ones or pursuing hobbies and interests that bring you joy. Make sure that you seek support from friends and or family. And it may even be helpful to look at support groups for partners of individuals struggling with addiction. Ultimately, the decision of whether to continue the relationship rests with you. And I know that sucks, but you have to think about what you really want from this situation. It's really important to assess whether your boyfriend's actions and efforts toward recovery align with your values and needs. And if you find that the trust cannot be rebuilt or that your boundaries are consistently violated, it may be necessary for you to reevaluate the future of the relationship for your own well-being. Again, I'm so sorry that you are going through this. There's no easy solution or answer to that one. So all I can do is send my love and know that I'm here if you need to follow up with anything at all. And I hope that you find a resolution soon that works best for you. Okay, so as you can see, the porn conversation is vast and could go on and on and on and on and on, to be honest. But I hope that today's discussion has been just the tiniest bit helpful Whether that leads to you choosing your porn more ethically, opening up conversations with your partner about it, or even exploring the avenue of audio porn or erotic literature instead. But please, 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 I cannot say it enough, do remember that porn is not a real representation of what sex looks like. And considering some of the most watched categories of porn are basically sexual assault and incest, really do remember that. It's not real. Please be mindful of what you are consuming. And if you take anything from today's episode, know if you are prioritizing ethical porn, at least then you know you are engaging in a consensual and safe space where workers are treated fairly, as sex workers deserve to be. If we can move towards a space where all porn is created ethically, the porn and sexual space will be a whole lot better for it. And before I go, to any parents out there, please, please talk to your kids about porn. It's important. This is obviously an adult-aimed podcast, but as someone who is qualified in sex education for young people, if anyone out there is a parent and wants to maybe ask how to open up those conversations with your kids, please do feel free to reach out to me, because I really feel this is so important, so that when they do have their introduction to pornography, it's hopefully in a healthy and ethical way, and we can start to change the movement of young people into their sexual journeys. So my door is open, and please feel free to ask me anything in regards to that. Anyway, I will see you again very, very soon. Until then, thanks for coming. Thank you for tuning in to Sex on the Peach today, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find and follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Sex on the Peach Cast, and you can also get in touch with me at sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Please do continue to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Love.